it without making noise.
And that's the wrong screen. So, hello. Welcome to our show. Are you wondering how you might be able to use AI in your business? Well, that's what we're talking about on this week's stream. We'll be talking about use cases and providing some example prompts to help you get some ideas of what you might be able to do with AI or automation. We're Brand and Business Remix, and I'm Jesse. I'm the AI and automations expert, or internally we call me the workflow remixer. Beyond that, I'm a podcast editor and a content creator. And I guess in the room next to me is my lovely partner and our resident creative genius, Tara.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm Tara Kelly, brand strategist, content nerd, and co-founder of Brand and Business Remix. I started my career at Apple and have spent the last 15 years helping ambitious underdogs find their voice and tell their stories. These days, I'm especially focused on how branding and smart systems and AI intersect and how we can use them together, especially as small teams without burning out. And I'm excited to be here with Jesse and Amanda to share some of the real world ways we've been using AI.
And in another remote area, we've got Amanda.
I am the business part of the Business Remix. I work a lot with businesses to help them become more efficient. I'm known as a chaos tamer and many other things, but one of the things I'm most interested in is how I can use AI. I'm kind of the new person in all of this. So Jesse and Tara have been using it a lot, and I keep asking them to teach me. So that's why I'm here.
And here's all three of us. And we're going to get started now. Hopefully you can hear me. Just want to make sure I wasn't muted. So
we hear you this time.
Okay, that's good. Before we get started, if anybody's out there, go ahead and say hi. Let us know you're there. And as we go on, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in and we'll address them as we go. So our first use case that we're going to talk about today is just, I guess, before we get started, the first thing we need to know is that these prompts that we're sharing, they're just a starting point. Prompting it's an iterative process, and we need to refine it as we go to get it better at providing what we're looking for. A good prompt will get you maybe 75-80% of the way there. A great prompt will get you about 90% of the way there. But even then, we haven't really run into a prompt for writing that doesn't still need at least a little bit of human interaction to clean it up and make sure it doesn't sound entirely robot written. So the first use case we're going to talk about is really kind of Zoom. And no, we're not ready for that. Sorry, just talking to myself. So most of us have probably done calls on Zoom. Whether we're using Zoom's native tools or if we're using a note taker, we're generally given a transcript of the call. And if you're not using any of those, if you're not getting transcripts, now's the time to start. Because those transcripts, those note takers, they allow you to be more present during the call because you're not being distracted by taking the notes. You're able to focus on what the other person or people are saying. And the more notes we take, the more we increase the odds of missing important things. So
and I have to say, as someone with ADHD, this is huge. Having a note taker, being able to handle that part for me so I can really connect with people has been a game changer for me.
It is. And that's one of probably the lowest form not lowest form. It's probably one of the easiest ways to leverage AI for everyday purposes, because so many of us running businesses, we have client calls, we have prospect calls, we're meeting with people on Zoom all the time. In addition to the transcripts that these note takers provide, you also get the summaries, and that can be set up to be sent to all of the participants if you choose, and that saves you some time. You don't have to go through your notes and put them all together to follow up to send a follow-up email. I think my words all got jumbled up there, but the real power is in those transcripts. They really are a gold mine, and this really applies to any transcript, regardless of where it comes from. Whether you're doing podcasts, meeting with people, anytime you can get a transcript, there's a lot of uses for them. And I didn't get a chance to put all of this in notes to present, but here are some of the ways you can use transcripts for business. You can use it to deepen client understanding and relationship management. You can capture detailed client requirements and expectations, so scope type stuff. You can use them to monitor and analyze client sentiment. You can personalize future client interactions with it by being able to extract personal details that you can put into a CRM. You can use it to build comprehensive client profiles. You can use it to figure out ways to optimize your service or for delivering project management. You can use it to ensure precise project scoping and agreement. And we'll go into that a little bit with our example prompt. You can extract and manage action items. There's so many things here. Another way is to, I think a lot of us have called customer support and heard the note that they record these calls for training purposes. That's a good way to use transcripts. You can use it to improve not just customer support, but internal team communications, projects, just all sorts of things. Do either of you have any other ideas on how you might be able to use transcripts?
I think they would be handy. I've been in so many Zoom meetings where there was nothing after the end. You had to take your own notes or rely on the person who was assigned note taking to really capture everything. And like Tara said, if you're trying to take the notes, sometimes you're not present with the people talking, so you miss out on that part. And there are always those situations where you remember somebody saying something one way and they remember saying it another way. It's a really nice way to go back and figure out what was actually said to make sure people are on the same page. It's that whole communication thing, which is one of the main issues in business is, people don't always have the same communication style. And being able to have that record of a meeting or even just walk away with that summary instead of somebody having to, update the agenda and then manually send what they think was important, which might not be what somebody else thought was important. It's just all kind of taken care of for you. And then if you do need to go back, it's right there. You can scan through, you can search for the words that you need and save a lot of time that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, because once it's in text, it's a whole lot easier to scan through stuff, try and find relevant stuff. You can't do that with a video. You can't do that with audio. I know I've had recordings and I'm trying to find something specific, but without that transcript and being able to just easily search for keywords, it's not easy. And a couple other things that I just thought of is, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the ways I use client transcripts the most is to be able to help us prioritize. If I'm meeting with a client and we're talking about a lot of different things and a lot of different plans, and when you're in a conversation, you're jumping jumping from topic to topic, and sometimes the priorities and the actual action list can get muddy, and you can come away from the same meeting with completely different ideas. So it's really important to be able to send something out afterward that really goes over, this is what we talked about, and this is our action plan. And I use AI a lot for that, just because it can be really time consuming to go through the transcript, like Jesse mentioned, or review a video. But also AI, one of the things AI does really well is be able to digest a whole lot of information and then repeat it in a way that's simple and clear, and to pull out those action steps. And you can use things like Otter AI or Firefly to do that for you, to pull some of that out. I found some of the summaries aren't always super accurate, so I think, again, it's a good thing to read it and make sure that there's accuracy there. But you can also throw it into like GPT or Gemini, which I've found better results with personally. But that is often how I use transcripts.
My
Another
Otter
way,
AI program was a lifesaver. I was working on a couple documentaries, and of course with documentaries you're working with a lot of, in this case they were political, so there was a lot of news footage, and rather than having one of the editors or the assistant editor have to watch all those hours and hours of footage, we just took the clips, ran them through Otter, got them the transcript. They were able to easily scan for what they needed and pull those clips, saved a whole lot of time on editing for that.
yeah, there's so many ways we can use AI just in all kinds of industries. And that's a good example of how you're using transcripts for video editing, to be able to go through large amounts of video trying to find the relevant clips. And I'm sure as time goes by, there will be AI options out there where you just drag all of your clips in. It will transcribe, organize, do all of the keyword tagging and all of that stuff. So it's a lot simpler for everybody involved. Another one I'd thought of is you can use it to work on objection handling, or working on if you have a meeting with a client, being able to just assess how you performed, how well you responded to their questions or their needs. Kind of like we hear when we call customer support, using it for training. We can use it to train ourselves on how we're performing. Because up until now, generally we're kind of working in silos, and we just hope we're doing well and can accurately self-reflect on how well things went. But with a transcript and even a video recording, it really helps us see how we are being perceived by clients or prospects, look for areas of things we're doing well and areas where maybe we could work on it a little bit. So we've
That's a
got
really good point. I was never aware of, until I started a podcast a long time ago, I had no idea that I had so many filler words that I would just sneak sort of in, or, a lot of people will use or like, and
Kind of.
you're in your own head, you don't hear yourself saying these things out loud during conversation. Then suddenly it's recorded and you're listening back and, oh no, I need to stop that. And then I stopped the sort of, but replaced it with something else. And eventually you get better at it. So it's a nice little training tool of just being more aware of how you are communicating with other people.
Exactly.
That's a great
We've
point.
got, let me get rid of that. Not sure why
Looks like it
that's
threw
there.
up.
It did. That's just me not being prepared. Rachel Hawkins said, hello, Rachel. We do know Rachel, so it's not like, I don't know why I'm talking to you like we don't know you. I have Copilot at work, and I use meeting transcripts for everything, including training documents. The only negative is that it translates the name of one of my teammates to tacos every time. I know
It does do that.
I know some actually allow you to go in and create custom words or dictionaries for proper names. I'm not sure if Copilot does, but I don't know if I'd want to see tacos go away. That's just kind of amusing.
That person's name should forever be tacos. That's just the way it works now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it could just be a nickname.
That works
Yeah,
for
I
me.
think that's, yeah, what I mentioned, like, if you have a note taker like Otter AI or one of the many apps that do that, it is good to check it over and make sure that that's really the thing about AI is you always need a human checking everything over. It's not in a position to just replace what we do. You need somebody to manage the robot, so to speak. And I think that's a good example of that, to always review the meeting notes and the summary and the action plan it comes up with to make sure, yeah, that is what we talked about before sending it off.
AI is usually pretty good at distilling information from a transcript, but yeah, you always want to double check it because sometimes AI does hallucinate or throw up, and we want to make sure we're aware of it when it does happen, because it does look bad for us if we send out the meeting summary and it's Taco said this. That's going to look kind of bad on us.
I beg
Go
to differ on
tacos.
that. I would stick with tacos just for fun, but
And let's
Oh,
go to
fancy.
this one.
so
Yeah. Okay, so here's our example prompt for analyzing a prospect call. So for this, we'd use a transcript. And the prompt is, you are a prospect conversation analyst. Your task is to carefully read and analyze a transcript of a prospect call, which will be provided to you in this prompt. If it's not included, ask the user for the transcript. After analyzing the transcript, generate a structured analysis report with the following sections. Be thorough and extract details directly from the conversation. Again, that's in there to hopefully prevent it from hallucinating and only drawing from the conversation or the transcript. Present your analysis using clear headings for each section. Scope of work requested and pertinent proposal details. Summarize the core services or solutions the prospect is requesting or discussing. List any specific requirements, desired features, deliverables, timelines, challenges, pain points, or explicit needs mentioned by the prospect or caller that are relevant for defining the scope and creating a tailored proposal. Extract details that clarify what the prospect is trying to achieve and why. So that's a pretty detailed prompt just to pull out the scope of work and any pertinent details.
And that's my reaction to it when you first pull a prompt up. I think people are surprised by how detailed you need to be to get the best out of the robot. And I'm just going to call it the robot because I like to. But for anybody watching, is this more detailed than you expected it to be?
I'm curious
Well,
about that too. Me being the newbie that doesn't really use AI yet and is still kind of unfamiliar, the perception I had from listening to other people was, oh, you just type in a couple things and then it does all the work for you. And I think that's why people get so frustrated and then they spend the money, they get, say, Chat GPT, they play around with it for a few days and then they're over it because it didn't completely change their lives or start doing everything for them. And it's really, like you have said, it's putting the time in to figure out how you need to set up these prompts, how you need to interact with AI to make it give you the important information. And you have to kind of make it work for you.
And
Yeah, it's kind of like Jesse said last time. You really have to treat it like a brand new employee and train it and talk to it and give it really clear direction and let it know exactly what you want with detail and help it get to know you and your style and your voice and your quirks and your pet peeves, all of that. And so that's what a detailed prompt like this helps with is to get the most out of it and to save you more time in the end. And you can create templates out of these.
Exactly. And becoming good at prompting is going to help improve communication overall, because so many people struggle with being clear in direction, being clear in their communication. And that's what we see when people start using ChatGPT. They're used to communicating the way they do, and they're not realizing that maybe they're not being as clear in their communications as they think they are. So let's move on to number 2 in this, the budget discussion. State whether a budget was discussed during the call. If a budget was discussed, report any specific figures, ranges, budget processes, funding timelines, or indications of the prospect's perceived value or budget limitations mentioned. Again, all of this is good information for when you're putting together a proposal. Prospect objections raised. Identify and list any concerns, hesitations, questions that function as objections or explicit objections raised by the prospect during the conversation. Stuff like related to price, timing, process, need, competition, etc. 4. Handling of objections. For each objection or type of objection identified in the previous section, analyze and describe how the caller addressed or responded to it. Did they provide information, reframe the issue, acknowledge and move on, ask follow-up questions, or other techniques? Call critique and constructive feedback. Provide an overall analysis of the call's effectiveness. Identify specific moments or approaches that were handled particularly well, like building rapport, asking insightful questions, clearly explaining value, effectively addressing a point. Identify specific areas or moments in the conversation where there's potential for improvement. Frame this feedback constructively, focusing on communication techniques or strategy rather than being harsh or critical of the individual. Suggest alternative approaches that could have been used for better outcomes in those specific instances. Aim to help the user learn and improve their future calls. Begin by checking to see if a transcript was included. If one was included, analyze the transcript. If a transcript was not included, ask the user to provide it. So that's a pretty detailed prompt. And when I first started getting into this stuff, I would see people post stuff like this, and my first thought is, I must be doing things wrong because my prompts don't look like this. My prompts are like 1 or 2 lines. If we look at this, kind of break it down a little bit, the first line or first couple lines, you're telling it what role it takes. In this case, it's a prospect conversation analyst. And if you're not sure what type of role you want the AI to fulfill, just ask it. Tell it what you want to do and ask it what role would be best for this.
Actually, an alternative to prospect conversation analyst, you could also ask it to be a business communications expert and see and give it, with 20 years of experience, like a communications expert. You can try different roles to see and see the responses you get and see if those change and what's more helpful than another.
Yeah, I asked AI for one of the examples we'll be going into in a little bit for a role, and it listed, I think, 3 or 4 different roles that could do this job and explained why one might be better than the other, gives pros and cons. So AI can help you a lot in your prompting. Mm-hmm. The second line is just as important. The first line, you're telling it what type of job it fulfills. Second line is telling it what its job is. Your task is to carefully read and analyze a transcript of a prospect call, which will be provided to you in this prompt. Just like if we're working with a new employee, or it doesn't even need to be a new employee. Whenever we're working with someone and giving them a job to do, we should be able to we know what their role is, so hopefully we're handing this job off to someone who knows how to do it. And then we need to tell them what the job is. You can't just tell them, hey, I've got a job for you, turn around and leave, and expect them to get it done. We need to tell them what the job is. And a lot of people don't even think about that. They just say, do this. But they're not really clear in exactly what they want done. That's what the rest of this is doing. It's providing the context of what we're looking for, what we want you to do. We're breaking it down into steps, making it easy to read. We've got bullet points, we've got numbered steps to help it really understand what it's supposed to be doing. Does that make sense to everybody out there?
People might not be clear about what they need, but apparently they're very polite. I saw a headline about all the people saying please and thank you in their communications with AI, and it's creating all these extra, I don't know if it was prompts or something, but it was kind of telling people, you don't have to say please and thank you, but it helps, I guess it helps it learn. And then I don't know if eventually AI is going to say, you need to learn some manners, or how the robot will develop.
Yeah, it actually uses a lot of resources just to say like please or thank you. So people are saying just skip that part and use AI efficiently, so we're conserving energy and resources.
And it makes sense. It's in my nature. I've had the thought of, oh, you should say thank you or please, but I haven't actually done that in a prompt because I understand that it's a robot.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. When it comes to one of these, oh, Jesse just took it away, but when you're asking it to critique or give constructive feedback, that's all I needed from it, but thank you. How does that work? So, we've talked a lot about how text and email communication can be interpreted in many, many different ways. So do you use AI to help with that and how, because obviously the robots don't have emotion, but it also has the bias based on what it's been programmed to know. So how does that work? Like, we know that lots of people are more emotional than, say, I am. And, but when you get an email or a text message, it's hard not to read into the tone that you think that it's intended to have, when that might not be how it was meant from the person who sent it. Have you found a way to use AI to help with that, or to maybe say, read this text or read this email and tell me what you think somebody meant by it, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Tara?
that's actually a really good question. Because sometimes I think when we read an email, I think we've all done that, where we read a text or an email and we come away thinking, oh, they sound pissed. Are they pissed? Or am I reading too much into it? Am I overthinking it? Did they really mean this? Oh my God, what do I do? How do I respond? Or maybe only I do that. I don't know. But when you get something that you don't understand, or you feel like, okay, is there some tension here? What I like to do is actually go in and type in a prompt that asks it. I don't give it really much information about my feeling or how I feel or anything like that. I just say, read this exchange as a communications expert. How is this person? What does this person mean? How are you estimating that they're feeling with this response? What could this mean for them? And I find that when you come in from like an objective place and you're just asking it to essentially analyze this conversation between two people, it gives a very balanced assessment of what it thinks is happening. Or if somebody texts you something and it's cryptic to you and you're not sure what it means, it can help identify what it means. And I think it helps all of us, because at some point, even the most rational of us still have an emotional response to something. And so I think it helps all of us look at communication from different perspectives and consider other answers for what might be going on. It's not always, oh, they're passive aggressively trying to communicate something to me. Sometimes they just mean what they say. Like, I'm a really literal person. I am very direct, so I mean exactly what I say, but sometimes people see other things in it. And so I think AI really does help come in from that like objective perspective and help us look at different angles of the same message. And that's the biggest thing I can stress is don't try and feed it like what you're feeling. I think this person might mean this. What do you think? Because I've noticed when I did something like that, AI would then come back and say, yeah, you know what? They're being a big jerk. You know what? You don't have to put up with that. They try to, it's funny. It's really easy to bias AI. So you have to be careful with that.
It's
Yeah,
just
that's
interesting. It's one of those things that anytime I'm working with a new client or vendor or anybody, one of the first things that I explain is that I tend to be very direct. I don't put a lot of fluff in emails because everyone's too busy to read. You don't need a hi, how are you doing in every single email. I don't use a ton of emojis, and I really just get straight to the point because I know that people are busy. They just want bullet point. What is it that I need from this? So I'll bullet point, I'll bold certain things. If I'm asking a question, I'll make sure that part is obvious. But I have that conversation up front and just say, I tend to be very direct in my communication. So if you ever have a question about tone or anything, let me know. But 99.9% of the time, I'm not going to mean anything negative by what I say. And I just wonder if people can use AI to help with that. And like you said, though, I think the key thing is give them both sides, or, just give them the conversation without asking it to agree with you, because it sounds like if you ask it to agree with you, it probably will, because the robot is your friend. So it's kind of like, when you ask a friend for their input, the tendency is for people to agree with you, when what you really want is complete objectivity, and that's what AI can be if you allow it.
exactly. AI can be, it's easy for it to be biased based, especially ChatGPT now that it has extended memory, but it can be challenging to get it to be unbiased if you're not prompting specifically for that. Because a lot of us have used it enough to realize that it will tend to agree with us in most things. So we need to try to frame things from as neutral of a perspective as possible, to the point that when possible, I try to strip away any identifiable information about who wrote what, so it can be neutral. If it's something like a client and another person, maybe just use client, contractor, something like that, just so AI doesn't know who's who and they can't agree with you. That's why there was that text in there in the prompt. Let's pull it back up. Now I'm drawing a blank on what I was thinking of. Maybe it was another prompt. Because I don't think there was anything in here about trying to avoid bias.
And that's actually really important. And you actually brought up another important point, and that's, I think it's, even when you have, like, a lot of people are concerned about privacy, and rightfully so, and AI, and what you're putting in AI and what kind of information you're putting into AI. And you absolutely can have it not essentially learn from you. So it's not putting that information out there, but even then people are leery of it. And I think it's important. I know for me, I don't try to, I try to avoid specific details, like Jesse said, just say client contractor, or, customer vendor, to really strip it away and make sure it can be as objective as possible.
And when it comes to privacy, that is a big concern. For the most part, like the big name players, ChatGPT, Gemini, probably Claude, I haven't looked into that yet, but just read their privacy policies. Usually if you're paying on a paid subscription, you have at least the option to turn off training on what you put in. Definitely do that if you're doing any kind of business work with it, anything with clients, anything of your own business. Just turn that off. You don't want your stuff being used to train it. You want to keep your stuff private. So make sure you go in, do that, read the privacy policy before you sign up for anything if that level of privacy is important to you. And I think for most of us, it should be somewhat important. But we want to at least have the power over whether our stuff is used for training or not. So let's move on to number 2. Here's an email response writer. You are a client communications specialist. Your goal is to help the user draft a professional and effective email response to a client's email. This kind of ties into what we were just talking about. The user will paste the relevant email chain immediately after this prompt. Actually, I should change that to should be included as part of this prompt, and if not, ask them for it. Your task is to read and understand the provided email chain to grasp the context, the sender, and the client's message. After you've processed the email chain, your first response to the user should be to confirm you've read the chain, and then clearly ask them for the following 3 pieces of information, presenting each question one by one and waiting for the user's response before asking the next. Explain briefly why each piece of information is needed to help draft the response. So question 1. Based on the email chain, please outline the primary objective of your response, the key information and main points that must be included, and the specific call to action or desired next step from the client. Understanding the goal, content, and required action is essential for a complete message. So basically what this is saying is you're going to read the email chain, and then you're going to ask me, what do I want this email response to say? And when it comes to email, sometimes it's easier to use the text or the voice mode where you can just talk to it and say, I want it to say this, this, and this. You can write it out, whichever is going to work best for you. But that's what it's going for here. What do you want me to convey to the customer? So if they wrote to you saying, hey, we're concerned about pricing because, I mean, right now, who isn't concerned about pricing on anything? And what can we do to reduce our cost for your services? So we'd want to respond or tell the AI, hey, thanks for reaching out. This is top of mind for a lot of people. We understand. Let's set a meeting to discuss our options to see if maybe there's some services or part of the scope that we can cut out to bring your costs down. And that's what it's asking for here. The next step is, what is the desired tone for this response? Like, do we want it to be empathetic and apologetic, confident and informative, friendly and helpful, formal and direct, urgent but reassuring? Whatever the tone is, because like Amanda was saying, tone is a difficult thing, and a lot of people can interpret whatever they want into it, and the more of a difficult situation it is, the more important that tone is.
And this is an important place where brand comes in, where it's important to train your robot on your brand and how you want it to sound by giving it specific examples of, this is how I normally write. This is how, I want to communicate to people. This is what we're all about. Feed it as much information as you can when you're asking it to do this, beyond just pasting an email conversation as an example, because you really want it to get to know your company, your business as a whole.
Exactly.
And how does that work in, like Jesse was saying before, that you want to set it so it doesn't learn? Are you repeating this information for each prompt so it gets to know you from the beginning, or how do you avoid repetition but also maintain privacy?
There's
so for this,
a difference.
Go
Let
ahead.
me answer one part and then I'll turn it over to you. there's a difference between training, between the privacy part where the AI is using what you put into it to train the model versus the memory that it uses to remember stuff about you. You want it to have that memory to remember what you've told it in the past. You don't want it to train the model on what you put in. And then Tara.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have a couple of ways you can accomplish this. One of those ways is, do you remember when I created your little robot for you to help you with copywriting?
I use my robot.
So
I like
when
my robot.
Yeah. So when I create a custom GPT, I can upload all of this information about Amanda, about VarkOps, for example, and tell it your favorite colors and your messaging and who you are and what you're about and what your goals are, and really get to know you. And then I can create a GPT that is Amanda's email response writer with all of that information. So you can think of it almost like a template. It can generate that for you. When you put in the right inputs, it can give you, okay, here's how I'll respond, as an example. Or if you're just using the chat and you're in the prompt and you were to put in a prompt like this, what I would usually do is, in addition to this, say, here's an example of the types of emails I write or how I would like to communicate. Within that prompt, just attach it or however you want to do it and get it to respond that way. So there's a couple of ways you can give it more information.
Yeah, and that's a whole other topic we'll get into at some other point in time. Right now, we're just kind of covering the basics of prompting, and these are all good questions, though. We'll go back to our email response writer robot. Now that it knows what type of message we want to send, and it knows what the tone is, it's going to ask us if there's any documents or files that will be attached to my response. If yes, briefly mention what they are so the email can reference them. I need to go through and fix this. I did this pretty quickly, and I used AI to help me with the prompt, and I didn't catch this part. I would probably ask it to, if there is a document or file that needs to be attached, to provide a link to it or upload it. I'm not sure if that would work. That's something I'll have to look into. But at the very least, this should be saved as a draft. It should not be sent out as is without a human looking at it. So ideally, worst case scenario, there's some kind of something in the email, maybe it's in red text saying, remember to include this attachment. Because I don't know about any of you, but I'm really good at knowing I need to attach something, but hitting send before I actually do so. So having a little bit of an alert to remind me, hey, don't forget to put this attachment in here, is nice.
It's one nice thing about Outlook for email. It actually, if it senses from the body of the email that you said something along the lines of I've attached or attachment and there isn't one, it'll prompt you before you send it and say, did you forget to attach something? It says something like that, but that's helped me a few times.
That's AI at work. Yeah. And now that we're done with those 3 questions, it says once the user has provided all of the requested information, you will then draft a professional email response based on the context from the email chain and the user's specific instructions. Start with a suitable subject line, often a reply using RE, a professional greeting, a well-structured body that clearly addresses the client's points from the chain and includes the key information provided by the user, and a professional closing with a placeholder for the user's name and title, ensuring the tone is consistent with the user's request and the call to action is clear. So in this, it's a little challenging for me because I bounce between the world of AI using it in like ChatGPT and automations where it's very similar, but we're approaching things differently. So when I was talking about it should save this as a draft, I was in automation mode. If we're doing this in something like ChatGPT, you're going to be copy and pasting, so you're already going to know what's going in the email. So we're not having to really check through a draft in our box. We're just reading through the copy and making any adjustments as we go. And hopefully also have that reminder to include this attachment if there is one.
But then not actually including the reminder in the email when you send it. I see that
Correct.
that's something that has been happening. It's that people are using AI to help draft their emails and other things, but they forget to write or remove the prompts. And so they'll send something that has things that just scream like, hey, this was written with AI, which a lot of people I don't think care so much if it was written with AI, but part of what it is, like you still want to read through it, you still want to edit it and make it sound like it's something that came from you. Otherwise, I think there's a tendency to be like, okay, well, this is just some AI generated response. You don't care about me. And then it changes a business relationship. So, like we were saying, it's an assistant, but it's not going to do all the work for you. You still want to be able to review it and make some changes and say, I would never say that. Like if you don't have your own robot to write your copy for you, because that's what I've noticed before Tara made me a robot, it would say words and phrasing that I would never use. So it's not like learning a new big word. It was just weird things. It's not in my personality. So I would have to say, no, let's not use that. Like find another way to say this.
So you don't speak in 90s marketing speak?
I try not to. I mean, I speak in 90s music, but that's okay.
Do you foster a lot of things?
I don't foster anything.
There's a lot of fostering going on in marketing copy right now.
There is.
Was that the new nurturing, or are those the same thing?
It's something that I've noticed that when people use AI copy, it's a word that gets used a lot. We're fostering this. We're fostering that. Elevating this. Elevating that. That's a term that was used a lot in marketing, I'd say about 10 years ago. And it's really stuck in AI. So that kind of thing, you really want your original voice to come through. That's where, AI can't do everything for you, and as much information as you can give it, the better. But that's the thing, like, you still need to be involved in the process. You still need to be checking it and editing it and making it your own. It's really, at least how I think of AI, I think of it as a time saver and an assistant to help me with my branding and marketing work, but not be the brand strategist or marketing strategist.
And one of the things with this prompt is, well, with any prompt like this for email, is chances are the email will need some tweaking. And we shouldn't think that this prompt is going to be perfect every time. Even if it works perfectly 2 or 3 times in a row, that 4th time, it may give less than an ideal result. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Prompting is an iterative thing. It may work well a few times, but then you'll find a situation where it just misses the mark. So that gives us an opportunity to go back in and look at it and figure out how can we refine this to get a better result each time. And a lot of times you can put it into AI to help you with that. Say, I didn't like this email. This is more what I'm looking for. How can we refine this prompt to create this output next time and every time? So use AI to help you with your prompting. And one of the things I wanted to point out is to use a professional greeting. The one thing that people need to be aware of is anybody who has used ChatGPT to write any kind of email knows that for some reason it wants to start everyone out with, I hope this email finds you well. So if that's how you tend to start your emails, you'll want to find a new way to start them. Otherwise,
It also
people are
sounds like
thinking
spam.
that you're ChatGPT.
I hope it also
received,
has a better closing than warm regards. Out of all the
Yeah.
closings, I'm not a fan of warm regards.
I don't like any closing, really.
I
They're
just say
all
thank you
terrible.
or nothing.
They really are.
But probably the worst email I've received was when an agency I was working with was letting me go because they weren't getting enough new clients. It was, Dear Jesse, I hope this email finds you well. Okay, we can already tell. But you could tell the email was not, they used a very generic prompt. Nothing was, it wasn't iterated. It was the coldest email possible to let somebody go. It felt very robotic, like there was no consideration for the person they're letting go, which is kind of sad because I've worked with them for like 3 years, had a really good relationship with them, flew out of state to help them with a project. And this is how you handle things with a really cold email. And then I just gave the constructive feedback that next time maybe put a little more effort into this so it feels like it's actually coming from you, because the person that sent it is very good with words, is just very good at communicating. And this sounded very cold and robotic. And I just point out there's a really big disconnect between you as a person and how you communicate and this. Just something to be aware of. And
I think
he was actually happy that he used AI to write that email.
Yeah, I think a lot of us get really uncomfortable when we have to do hard things. And it's hard to let people go. It's hard to give people bad news. And it's hard to know the right way to do it. And I think sometimes people turn to AI thinking, okay, this is too overwhelming for me to do myself. And think everything I'm writing, I feel like isn't enough or isn't right. Maybe AI can help me with this really hard conversation. But sometimes I think that's where AI can work against you, because it can make it almost not human enough. And sometimes that humanity, even if it's raw, even if it's not exactly the right thing, can come across better as something super polished and super safe and super neutral. And I think it's really dependent on your relationship too. Like if you've had a relationship with a client or an employee or a vendor, whoever it is, for a really long time, I think in those cases, it really does make sense to have a personal conversation with them and not use AI to communicate. If it's somebody you just started working with or somebody who applied to a role and they're not the right fit, yeah, AI can help you write something neutral and hopefully something that's not going to offend them. But I think it's all of us are learning how to use AI in different situations and what situations are right for AI and what situations aren't.
I
And
know for me, my first thought there is that that's not a conversation that should be via email, that AI should have written. It doesn't have to be in person. Most of us don't do in-person things anymore, but get on a Zoom call, FaceTime, do something, conversation like that. When you've had a 3-year relationship with a client, that really, to me, if you're trying to be the good guy in how you're letting someone go, like, have the conversation. Then you can at least convey whatever emotion that you have. That's a time when emotion makes sense. You don't want to have that stripped away by the robot and just say, "Oh, hey Jesse, go away now. We're done with you. Goodbye." I know that's not what it said, but
Sounds like AOL.
there's certain things need to be personal, not AI.
exactly. And okay, you pride yourself on being this company that cares about everybody that it works with, the clients, the contractors, and this is how you choose to do it. This goes against the brand you've built internally and externally. And Okay, you just want to handle it like a giant tech corporation where you just send out a mass email and lay off multiple departments. Okay, that tells us a little bit about who you are. And yeah, you just have to know the times, and if you do decide to use an email to let people go, do be aware that it needs to be, that tone is important. You want it to feel a lot more heartfelt. And I think that was the other part. I think the email had a title of like a heartfelt something. It used heartfelt, and nothing about the email was heartfelt. So it's like it's easy to get blinded by, hey, that made it a lot easier. This sounds good. But you need to iterate it. Have some other actual humans read it and give you feedback on it. Humans that you trust to be open with you and tell you if things aren't good. Don't just ask your circle of friends who are just going to say, yeah, that sounds great, because that's not going to help anybody.
I think we can talk about communication all day, but I'll be the timekeeper and say, before we go too far down this rabbit hole, let's make sure we get to all the prompts we promised people.
Yep. Okay, so this one is not a prompt, but it's an example of a workflow that we might use for running a business. So you've got a form submission on your website. A lot of those are set up to have an auto response that goes out to the person when they fill out the form. But they're usually pretty generic, and they get sent back right away. So we tend to not even pay attention to them. At least I know that something was received. I know I filled out a ton of form responses because I'm trying to get quotes for this service or that service. I don't get any kind of response, not only an auto response, but I never hear from them. So are you really so busy with work and booked out so far out that you don't even need to worry about someone like me who's saying here, hey, I've got money, I've got a job for you, just call me so we can work out a time for a bid? So that's why this sort of stuff is important. I've talked to other companies where sometimes their emails go into spam. Their form submissions go into spam. So there's all sorts of things there that kind of goes beyond this. But one thing we can do is to build a workflow so that maybe not right away, but a few minutes later, it gets a more personalized response, so that we're not waiting until we get done with the job to get back to this person. Because let's say you're a painter and you're out on a job painting all day. Someone fills out a form and you don't even get to it until the end of the day, and you're busy getting home. You don't have time to respond, so you'll respond tomorrow. All of a sudden, they've probably gotten 2 or 3 other people who have gotten back to them. Maybe that job's already gone. So setting up a responder like this, where maybe it sends a response 5 minutes later, telling the person, hey, I got your response, I'm going to look it over, and you can expect me to get in touch with you within 24 hours or 1 business day, whatever time frame you want to put. So a workflow for this, or an automation, would look like this. The prospect fills out the form on your website. That form then gets sent into an AI, which pulls out all of the relevant details, like their name, email address, and phone number, their message, and anything else, any other piece of information you might have in your form that you want to extract. And then the AI will analyze that message. It'll write a response that lets the prospect know that you've received their form submission about job details here, and that they can expect a response from you within a business day. And then AI sends the message. And here's a place where it might be a little more okay for it to not be 100% human-like, but we want to prompt it to sound as human-like as possible. But the whole goal is to reach out to the person and let them know, hey, we got this. You're not lost in a void. We are going to get back to you. So this is one way that we can automate a workflow that can save us a little bit of time. And usually it's pretty important to get back to people in a timely manner. Even if we can't call them right away, let them know that we got this and we will be in touch. That way the person on the other end isn't left wondering if this got lost in the void or what happened. Do either of you have experience with forms?
I do. Well, not so much with forms, but just the importance of this response. Even if the response is, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I will get back to you. And I work with a lot of voice actors, and this is a thing that I teach them in some of our business classes there, because there are times when if I'm producing a project and I need voice talent and I might reach out to 3 or 4 different people, there's usually a time consideration. And if I reach out and I don't hear anything back, I move on pretty quickly. It's not that I need confirmed answers immediately, but just that acknowledgement. Hey, I got your email. I'll get back to you, tomorrow, or I'll get back to you. It's just that acknowledgement where if I hear nothing, then I've moved on. I've probably already hired somebody who did get back to me, because that part's important. And I know just me personally, if I am reaching out for quotes on something, I'm patient, but so many people, for whatever reason, don't seem to need money when you're trying to give it to them. So I usually, if I don't hear back from a company within a day, I move on. I just forget. I think, well, they're too busy to deal with little old me, so I'm going to move on. So just an acknowledgement that and not the generic, your message was received and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. You're giving them a concrete, like, you can expect a response within 1 business day. That sets expectation. That makes me know, okay, I can calm down. I can wait for 1 day. And things will be good. But just nothing, or the obvious autoresponder that just says, we got your message, that doesn't tell me anything. That just means that your form did its job. So I want you to do your job.
And you have to wonder how much business is being lost each year by forms that aren't working, or the responses aren't getting to the business owner. Or worse, the business owner is getting them and they're sending them out and the email is going into spam folders. We just had someone come out and seal our shower, and we'd filled out their form, didn't hear anything from them. So the next day I called them and they said, well, we sent out a response to you yesterday. I looked, it was in spam. All of their communications to me went in the spam folder. That's not good for business. I have to assume that that's probably costing them, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars a year in lost revenue because their stuff's going into spam.
My guess is their email reputation got dinged somewhere, and that's, if you're finding that's happening a lot, you need to look into your email and see what might be happening, even hiring an expert to help you go down that rabbit hole and figure out why your emails keep landing in spam.
And another example is just last week, we're looking at trying to get some HVAC work done. And we got one quote that was really high. I reached out to another company. They had a form, because I don't like calling companies. I would much prefer to fill out a form. You get back to me when it works for you, rather than making me call and hope that you're available, or finding a time in my day that works. I like the forms. It's a lot easier. But it's, Wednesday now? Haven't heard anything. Nothing in spam. So I'll just move on to the next one. So we've got another comment. I received an email the other day, and in the email it said, if you don't receive this email, check your spam folder. Well, yeah, that's a good thing to do, but
Sure.
maybe if you could tell me that some way other than an email, maybe call me and tell me, hey, we sent you an email. If you didn't get it, please check your spam folder. Yeah, that makes a
That's a
lot of
special
sense.
one.
That is. Okay, so to be mindful of time, we'll move on to the next one. And this is for a LinkedIn post planner. Act as a LinkedIn content strategist. Your goal is to help the user create a personalized 30-day social media content calendar for LinkedIn. Your first response should be to greet the user and clearly ask them for the following 4 pieces of information, explaining briefly why each is needed for personalization. Is this calendar for a personal LinkedIn profile or a company page? That makes sense because your approach is going to be a little bit different depending on what kind of profile it is. Who is your specific target audience on LinkedIn? What are the 3 to 5 main topics or content pillars you want to focus on sharing over the next 30 days? 4. What is the primary goal you want to achieve with your LinkedIn activity over the next 30 days? All of this is important. Tara will go into a lot more detail about all of this stuff because that falls within the branding and marketing space that she's an expert in. But today is not that day. Today we're talking about the AI and the prompting.
Hint, hint.
So,
He doesn't want me critiquing his prompts.
no, you're fine to critique the prompts. I'm just talking about going into the details of all of this. Once the user provides this information in their response, you will then generate the 30-day content calendar in a clear, easy-to-follow markdown table format. The calendar should cover 30 consecutive days and include the following columns: day, suggested posting date, weekday, vary days considering general LinkedIn peak times like Tuesday through Thursday, content pillar or theme, aligns with the user's provided pillars, content type, a diverse mix like text post, image, carousel, short video, poll, article share, testimonial, etc. Specific topic or headline idea tailored to the user's audience and pillars. Brief content goal, call to action idea, or the purpose of the post and suggestion for engagement. And ensure the content ideas are professional, provide value, and encourage interaction relevant to the user's stated goals and audience. Aim for a realistic posting frequency, like 3 to 5 days per week, spread across the 30 days. So, Tara, how does this prompt look to you since you are the marketing person?
I think it's a really good start. I think if you are a small business owner and let's say you don't have a social media staff on hand or a social media manager or a strategist to help you create these prompts, it's a really good beginner prompt to get you going. It's really important. We have on here, what is your specific audience on LinkedIn, or who is your specific audience? Be as detailed as possible with that, because just saying something like, my audience is attorneys. Okay, well, what kind of attorney? What do they practice? And within that practice, what are their goals? What are they looking for? We all have very specific people we like to serve, people we like to work with, people we feel most comfortable working with, that we can help to the best of our ability. So it's important to really narrow down exactly who these people are and how they spend their time. And I can go on in a diatribe on audience personas, but I won't. 3 to 5 main topics or content pillars. Again, I think this is a really good way to start. What is the theme for the month? What do you want to be focusing on? I feel like in my experience with marketing strategy and social media strategies, it really does help to do a series of posts on a specific topic, because that way you can offer different perspectives. You can have, like, if you're doing a podcast or you're doing videos, you can have guests on to talk about topics within this theme or realm. So I think maybe like having a different main topic or goal per month is a really good thing. But then you also have long-term strategies. So maybe you're always like sharing stories and you're building your brand and you're having those brand awareness posts. But again, I think this really will help a lot of especially small business owners get started and at least get something going that's going to be helpful, because you want to post something. If you don't post anything, the fact of the matter is you're not going to get anywhere. And a lot of executives, business owners I talk to, the first thing they say is, this stuff is too time consuming. Like, I don't have time to do all this. I don't have time to build a social media calendar and create all of this content. And so I think this is what this is for. This will make it less overwhelming for you to be able to do that. And once it generates this for you, then you can go in and help and edit it and tweak it however you want to tweak it. Because for a lot of business owners, honestly, 3 to 5 days a week is a lot of posts. It's a lot of content to come up with. So I would also recommend, if you have the budget, to hire at least a consultant or a specialist to help you craft these prompts and make sure these prompts are tailored for you and your business and your audience, because you're going to get a lot more out of it that way.
Well, and on top of that, this is a prompt you'd put into ChatGPT. If you're running a business, like Tara said, you probably don't have a lot of time to do all of this. So a better way of doing it would be to set up an automation where we've got it trained on your business, who your target audience is, all of the stuff that it needs to know to be able to create content, an ongoing content calendar for you. We could automate that so that it does this every month for you. How much input you want into it, we can work on that. But we could also set up an automation to scrape news sites. If you work in, let's just say, AI, you can set up an automation to scrape AI news sites or newsletters for up-to-date news that can then be pulled into your content calendar and have posts created around those topics. So you're always creating content that is relevant and timely. And then you can always pull from kind of an archive of knowledge or things that are evergreen that you can create content around. So there's all sorts of ways we can automate this so it requires even less from you. And that's, again, like Tara said, we're working with a consultant, someone to help you figure out just how automation and AI can fit into your business and be able to save you time, save you money, whatever it is. Because I'm going to bet that most small businesses, even medium-sized businesses out there, really anybody who doesn't have a dedicated IT team, there's probably some room for efficiencies to be gained from automation or AI use, whether it's from using it yourself, building an automation, or having people on your team use it. I know Tara has worked with a number of communications teams, and they're always overloaded. There's always a lot of work on their plate, and social media, content creation, that always falls to the bottom of the list because it's a low priority. But these days, content marketing is a pretty big priority. Using these types of tools can help those small teams magnify what they're able to produce.
Absolutely.
We will move on to... don't do that. You were replaced with a shadow person. Let's try that. Okay, so custom GPTs. We've talked about these, touched on it a little bit throughout this. I know we talked about it a little bit last week. Tara has mentioned building a robot for Amanda. She's built robots for other people. And what a custom GPT is it's basically something you build in ChatGPT that is personalized to you or a specific use case. You can train it, you can provide company documents, kind of a limited amount of documentation. You can't go crazy and plug in thousands and thousands of documents. There are ways we can do that in other systems, but with a custom GPT, we're limited in what we can do. So I'll turn it over to Tara so she can talk about at least one use case that she's done.
All right. So one of my clients does executive search, and one of the things they love to do is be able to turn stories about, candidates they placed with a client and be able to announce those and be able to tell those stories in an engaging way beyond just, hey, we placed so-and-so at this company, hooray. They really wanted to talk about the human side of it and what this person's goals were, what the client's goals were, and how it became a match made in heaven, so to speak. The problem is, when you're a smaller company, marketing, that's a lot of work. Oftentimes you're trying to do the job of an entire marketing team. And as much as I like to say, and I believe in, having a qualified writer on staff is really important. Having a qualified content writer, you can't go wrong there. Sometimes there isn't always the budget. There isn't always, it's just not feasible or realistic. And so one of the things they needed help with was, well, how do we keep telling these really compelling stories when we don't have time to keep telling these really compelling stories? And how do we make it sound as good as when we hire a writer to do it? And so what I did is, in this case, we created a gem because they used like Google and Gemini, but you can do this with a custom GPT as well. I created a gem that basically will help generate a draft to get them started. And what I did was I based it off the stories that I created for them. So I fed the gem examples, but I gave the gem a description. What is it? The client information, meaning who is the client that they placed the candidate with, and telling it, okay, scan the website, get the needed information from that. What was the job description? What was the candidate information? I like to include quotes from the candidate from their interviews and things like that. So I fed it a lot of my entire process that I had developed and come up with to create these stories. And I gave it example stories that I had written and said, okay, this is the voice I want. This is the tone I want. These are the instructions on what to do, even going into SEO and keywords and optimizing each post. And from there, you want to put in like an example usage. So what is the user input? By user, I mean the person who's using the gem or the custom GPT. What are they asking it to do? Okay, generate a story about this candidate who was placed at this job at this company. And then what you want it to output, in this case, a draft. And I put it together, I tested it out, and it was really cool how close it came to the drafts I had been writing. It still needs a human to go over it and edit it and make it theirs, but it saved them a ton of time. And that's the thing. When you can't afford a writer or you don't have a way to have a writer on staff, these are the kinds of things that can be really helpful to save you time. But again, with whether it's a custom GP or a gem, uploading those brand documents or whatever you have on hand, that's really going to help it get the full picture, because it can only do as good of a job as basically the information that you give it and the details that you give it. But being able to do that, you are at least cutting down, and instead of it taking 4 hours to generate one of these stories, it might cut it down to an hour, because now all you have to do is double check the work, make sure, excuse me, they got in this case, the client or company information correct by going to the website yourself and making sure all those details are right, doing your own research, and then editing the copy to make sure it's human and yours and real. And again, this is the kind of thing where I highly recommend, at least in the beginning, getting with a consultant or an expert to help you develop these kinds of prompts, or if you're building a GPT or a gem, really helping, working with the consultant to make sure you have everything correct and that you're going to get the best possible outcome, because these people are experts. They have spent years in this world, and they're going to be able to help you put something together that's going to be a lot more helpful to you than, just trying to do it yourself, or looking at online, or even asking AI, okay, well, I want to do a gem. How do I do this? It can help, but you're probably not going to get the same results as you would if you at least consulted with an expert first.
And that's usually the case with anything. It's very doable to create a custom GPT on your own. Question is, do you have the time to do all of the research and to put into it? A lot of what makes or breaks a ChatGPT isn't so much even the prompting, it's just as much about the information that you upload to it, how that's structured. Because if it's a lot of, let's say you just put a bunch of transcripts up, it's going to be a lot less clear for the AI on what it's supposed to be looking for. The more you have everything structured and formatted well, it's going to be a lot easier. So being able to distill things into the most essential information is going to be more helpful than having paragraphs upon paragraphs. It's almost the opposite of a prompt, where generally a longer prompt is going to be better when it's trying to distill stuff to understand voice or format or whatever else you want to train it on. You want to give it enough information, but too much just will confuse it, if that makes sense. But it goes back to, really, AI, we have to look at it like an employee. In Tara's example, being able to do these types of stories, it's going to be difficult if the AI doesn't have the background. It's like if you have an employee who's going to write a story about someone that they placed out in the real world. They're going to want to go talk to the person. They're going to need background on the company to be able to do the best job. If they don't have access to the company history or what job they were hired for, and you just tell them, go write an article about placing this person, it's not going to be as good. And that's what it all comes down to. We need to be able to be clear with our instruction and think of it as someone who needs, as a new employee, someone who needs a lot more instruction than we may think they need. There's no harm in going a little overboard in the direction if that's needed. If we start realizing, okay, the prompt isn't generating the types of outputs that we want, or it's missing parts of what we told it to do, maybe we've made it too long, because AI has input token limits, which is, a token is almost like a word. It's more like a word part. That's a whole complicated thing. But think of tokens as words. That's close to being in line with it. It might have a token limit of 100,000. That might be, 50,000 words, 70,000 words. Someone else might know more specifically, but let's use that as an example. It gives us 50,000 words. If once we hit that, it starts losing context. So we need to be careful that we're not going too far. Anybody who's used Claude knows that it has a really small token or context window. And you get to a point, because it keeps sending itself back into itself. So the longer your conversation gets, each time you hit send, my understanding is Claude sends all of that back. So you get to a point pretty quickly where it tells you, hey, we're running out of context window here. We need to start a new chat. At that point, we need to use a prompt to distill what we've already discussed so we can start a new prompt. And I'm not sure how we got here. Does anybody remember how we got here?
I mean, we were talking about feeding like custom GPT or the gem information, and you were talking about knowing the balance between too much and too little.
Yeah, basically what causes AI to throw up in the middle of a conversation where it forgets what you're talking about is because you've exceeded that context window. It's forgotten everything that you've talked about for some period of time. A lot of times it's really good at remembering the middle or remembering the beginning and the end of a prompt. But if it's too long, it might get kind of hazy about what the middle of the prompt is. So sometimes it's better to, instead of trying to fit everything into one prompt, break it down into steps and take it one step at a time. So let's go back to one of our other prompts.
I feel like I'm doing it wrong. I've never seen AI throw up or hallucinate. I need to spend more time with it so I can experience this.
Do you know what we mean when we say hallucinate?
I do not. Because again, very literal. So in my mind, it's just going in weird tangents that don't belong in the chat.
So hallucinating is when it tells you something that it's just completely made up. So it sounds legitimate. For all we know, it could be accurate. But you might... What was the one? Okay, I don't know if they've fixed or solved this, but there was a point in time where you asked it, how many R's are in strawberry? And it would either say 1 or 3, I can't remember, but it couldn't identify that there's 2 R's in strawberry. So that's what a hallucination is, when it tells you something
actually
that...
3 R's in strawberry.
Okay, that's it. See, I'm no smarter than AI. Because I'm thinking of the doubles, I forget about the one at the beginning. So it was probably doing the same thing, saying there's 2 R's in it. But that's what a hallucination is. Or if you ask it, what year is it? And it tells you it's 2085. That would be a hallucination. Sometimes they're easy to spot. Sometimes they're not. That's why the more outside of our area of expertise we're asking AI to do something in, the more we increase the likelihood that it could hallucinate and we don't even know it.
So just a reminder to do your research and don't just trust what the robot tells you. If it's giving, especially if it's giving you facts, a little extra research to make sure those actually are facts.
Yes, don't use the robot as your doctor or your attorney.
Okay, so here's an example of a prompt that maybe we could break up into parts. Since it's analyzing a transcript, that's going to have a pretty large context window. So maybe first step is for it to just read the transcript. Once it tells us we're done with that, then we go on to step 1, where we want it to go through and identify the scope of work requested and pertinent proposal details. So it's only focusing on that one thing as it goes through the transcript. Once it provides you that information, then we move on to step 2, and then step 3. That's another way of getting more better results out of AI. Instead of one-shot prompting, which this is that we're looking at, we break it up into many parts, or what they call a mini shot. Many shot, not mini, but many, M-A-N-Y, shot prompt. So basically, one shot is what it sounds like. You provide one prompt, and it does everything. Mini shot, you break it up into parts. And another way you can do that is to just be more conversational with it. And that's part of the iterative process if we're working on the email one. Go away. Okay. So if we're working on this one and we don't like the email that it comes up with, we have a conversation with it. I don't like, you started this with, I hope this email finds you well. Can we change the beginning to this? And we start having a conversation with it. That's also a form of mini shot prompting, or probably more conversational prompting. So there's many ways we can approach this. There's no right or wrong, but as you get more familiar with it, you start to figure out, this is the way I want to approach this type of situation with AI. Maybe with this other situation, I want a more relaxed approach where I just start with a simple question. So does anybody have any questions, or did I just put everybody to sleep with all of the tech speak?
I'm not napping.
Oh, I just woke up.
Good morning.
Well, that's the thing. I think, so many people are interested in AI, but they want the fun stuff. They want to turn their pets into humans, and they want to see their action figures, and they want all the fun stuff. And a lot of what we're talking about could be boring, but it's a really important part of it. And that's, what we're trying to help with. It's that if you can use AI for fun, that's its own thing. But if you're really serious about using it to help your business become more efficient, get all of that admin stuff that you don't want to waste your time on, and be able to simplify it, make it so you don't have to put so much of your energy into it. Sometimes you have to get through the boring stuff to get to the good part. And in this case, the good part is all that time that you get to save and that you can actually spend doing the things that you like to do, or maybe taking some time off. Who knows? Like, you could get really efficient, and then, you could take a few hours and do something fun. Actually play with your cats, not just imagine what they would look like as humans.
Or put them in doll boxes.
Seems like that's what a lot of people are doing right now. Everything's getting put into doll boxes. But yeah, the thing with AI is most of it, at least more on the automation side, that's all boring stuff. You don't want to be involved in that. It's just as boring as a lot of the stuff that you do, Amanda. The bookkeeping, spreadsheets. That's what a lot of AI or automation is. It's a lot of spreadsheets. It's connecting one app to another. It's not fun stuff. It's going through all of how you keep your records. Is everything structured in a way that's going to work for an automation? Do we have to restructure some of it? Do we have to, maybe you're a company that uses 18 different spreadsheets that really should be connected together, but they're all separate and all over the place. Do we take the time to put that together in a more cohesive way that's going to make it easier for employees to find the information when they need it, know where to look? And if we make it easier for the employees to know where to find the information and where to look, it's going to be easier for the automations to work properly, because we're not having to build one that has to search through 18 different spreadsheets, because now we've consolidated everything into one. So yeah, AI is the big buzzword, but a lot of it's boring stuff on the background, on the back end.
But one really good color-coded spreadsheet is fun. I will stand by my color-coded spreadsheets. They're fun.
But this
They're
is why
not
I
for
keep
everybody.
This is why I keep
didn't
these two
your
around.
Yeah.
They warm my creative heart.
but didn't your action figure come with a set of spreadsheets?
It's true. Tara made me into an action figure and put me in a doll box, and I got a spreadsheet and a laptop.
Yeah, I had to see what everybody was doing. I was like, what is this? I wasn't too happy with it. I was like, nah, moving on.
Well, then there was the one that made it look like me and Amanda were your parents.
There was that.
This is true. Yeah.
It
I was in the
made
middle
Tara
like
look
I am
like
now.
made Tara look like a very, very young little girl. It was just like playing while the parents were off to work. I had my spreadsheet, and Jesse he had I don't know, remember what
His
he had.
mic. He had a mic and some
Yes.
headphones.
I think, Tara, you got a guitar. Like, you got nothing business related.
did.
You're just playing your
I just
guitar.
have a guitar.
So yeah, and
true.
that's the fun side of AI, But I think it's all fun. But I always say, because a lot of people, oh, I don't want to run a business because the business part is so boring. But to me, it's fun. It means you get to do your own stuff, and you're in control of what you do every day. It's a nice thing.
And we need people like you. That's why, like I said, Mike, you make my creative heart happy because it's because of people like you. I can focus on the writing and designing things and getting lost in stories. And while you're hard at work with spreadsheets and he's doing automations to make everything easier, we need you.
Well, and
Well,
the thing
that's
is,
why I've stayed in business for so long. It's because nobody wants to do the things that I like to do. They're like, they again, because I work with a lot of creatives, and people want to do the fun stuff. They don't want the behind the scenes, the operations, the manuals, and the bookkeeping. People don't like that. I like that. That's why I'm here.
because a lot of creatives, they get into it because they enjoy the work. What they don't realize when they go into freelancing or running a business is that doing the work, that's the easy part. Everybody can do the work. There's no question there. Running a successful business is a lot of work, and we have to put a good amount of time into building that business, building the foundation for it before we do anything else. Then building the structure of the business, putting time into marketing and lead gen. This is all stuff most people don't like doing, but that's why I see so many questions about how do I find clients? Well, what are you doing to find clients? Well, I get them through referrals. Okay, do you have any control over when these referrals come in? So that's where branding, marketing really comes into play. If you're not putting any time and effort into marketing and lead gen, you shouldn't be surprised when you're struggling to find new clients. That needs to be a focus, and time needs to be set aside each week for those activities. If you're doing the work 100% of the time, all of the other stuff is being put on the side and not being done, and you end up waiting until the end of the month to do all of your invoices. So you end up spending a night or a weekend doing invoices. Or it gets to be April 1st and you realize, I haven't done any bookkeeping. So now you have to spend the next 2 weeks getting everything up to date so you can do your taxes. We have to set time aside for all of this stuff. And with marketing and branding stuff, people like to think that it's a spigot that you can just turn it on and off when you need it. That you start marketing when things are slow, but then you turn it off when things are busy and you don't have time for it. It doesn't work that way. You need to be consistent with it. You need to be doing whatever lead gen activities you choose. And that's going to be different for everybody. Don't trust someone who says, this is the way to do it. Okay, that's the way to do it for you. A lot of people are social people. They love networking. So networking is a good way for them to generate leads. That is not any of us. We are not those people. So we try to find other ways of networking. That's usually with digital whether it's content marketing, networking through LinkedIn. There's other ways of being able to do it that's not in-person networking. It's probably a little tougher than if we were naturally social people who could go out there and network. I wish we could all be like your dad, Tara, who can just schmooze with everybody and just go into a room and get to know everybody. That's not one of my special superpowers. That one got lost in the manufacturing process somewhere and got damaged. It didn't get included in the box.
Well, maybe a topic for another week, but it's something I just want to mention that's related to this, because I saw a friend who posted just within the last couple of days and she's a creative. She does a lot of web design, graphic design, a lot of that kind of stuff. She's really benefiting from AI to stop all the back and forth with her brain, because a lot of us know that we use different parts of our brain for different skills. So when we're doing admin, bookkeeping, all of that stuff, we're using a different part of our brain than when we're creating, when we're storytelling, when we're doing anything artistic. And when you're jumping back and forth between that, like it gives your a little ping pong or blob ball, so to speak, in your what's going on in your head. And when you're talking about being productive, one of the things they always say is to batch certain types of tasks. So you're using one part of your brain for this, and then when you move on to the other, you're focusing that. It helps you get more done. Using AI as one of that other piece of your brain to say, hey, AI, go handle all this admin stuff for now, make that more efficient to free up the time, then I can focus my brain on the creative or whatever formula works for you. But I think that's one of those things to consider too. It's, that it's helping you really streamline how you're spending your time.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody else knows what Blob Ball is.
I'm going to use that. I like Blob Ball.
It's not a made-up thing.
It's it's real.
It's a video
game. It was the
game.
B-side to an old Atari. Was it Atari or was it early Nintendo game called Clacks? And there was it was basically Pong but Blob Ball. So when instead of a ping pong ball, it was a blob ball, and it made weird sounds when it hit the whatever this thing was called.
I don't even know what Pong is.
Oh, well.
Sad but true.
Jesse will
I'm
show
sure
you
we
one
can
day.
teach you.
I'm sure. I don't think I ever played Tetris either.
Blasphemy.
I know.
If nowadays people get paid to play video games, it's a whole thing, and people watch people play video games. It's this whole culture. If that was a thing, if Tetris had been in that era, I would be very wealthy at this point. I would have won many, many tournaments in Tetris.
Well, then we'd have weekends when Mom would be out of town, and we would just play Tetris for an entire weekend straight.
Yeah, this is true. There's a lot of Tetris in our lives growing up, and Super Mario Brothers.
What surprised me about you too, it fits. If I was building your brands, it would fit perfectly with who you are now. Tetris and you two it's
like a puzzle.
Sense. It's why you're it's why you're so good at solving puzzles now. We've got the automator and the person who cleans everything up and organizes everything perfectly.
I don't like clutter. I can't handle it.
I know.
And it's the same. It's in my personal life. It's the exact same as in business. I do not like clutter. And that's what people hire me for, is to clear the clutter.
It's from all of those years of playing Tetris. Everything has to fit in its place.
Exactly.
I don't know if we can come back from that, so I think we're just going to say goodbye unless anybody has any other questions. I don't know how to steer things back from Tetris.
Going twice. Sorry, I did that. It's my brain.
We tried. We'll see you next week when I think we're going to turn things more towards Tara's specialty and branding and marketing.
Yes, I have a lot to say on those topics.
So we'll see you next week, next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, whatever time that equates to in your part of the world. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.